If you're watching this, maybe it's because you love to knit, or maybe you're new to the craft and are just learning how to knit. Let's face it, sometimes crafting can get on our nerves. In this video, I'm tackling frustration and the fiber arts. What causes it, and what can we do about it? Hi, welcome to Music Maker. I'm Harriet. I've been a knitter and crocheter for a little over 40 years now, and a few years ago I learned to spin and weave as well. This channel is where I come to talk about the various projects and challenges and works in progress that I get up to in the field of the fiber arts. My hope is that you'll come here and find things that are useful and interesting for you on your fiber arts journey, and that you'll like and subscribe and come back again and again. In one of the very first videos that I made for this channel, I talked about knitting and quitting. How to know when to carry on with a project, and how to know that it's time to just give up and frog it and move on. The thing is, in the space between knitting and quitting, there's a lot of potential options. So maybe we don't want to quit a particular project, but we also have this sort of sneaking suspicion that it's not going to be, enjoyable or productive in either the short term or the long term. Basically, when you're a knitter or a crocheter or a spinner or a weaver, it's not all that uncommon to be frustrated at times by either your projects or your process. When it comes to knitting, our frustrations can be very generalized. So we can wonder, why can't I get gauge? Why do I knit so slowly? Or we can have more specific frustrations, like why do the armholes and the necklines of my sweaters always look so wonky? Why do I have so much trouble having neat edge stitches? To answer and possibly resolve these questions, it helps to know what frustration is and where it comes from. Psychologists define frustration as an emotional response to feelings of either stagnation or helplessness. Specifically, they identify 3 underlying emotions that make up a feeling of frustration. On the one hand, you may feel sad. On the other hand, you might feel anxious. And lastly, you might feel angry. If you've got a really bad case of frustration, you feel all 3 simultaneously, or you just keep cycling through all of them. But we'll take each of these emotions in sequence and think about how they contribute to your sense of frustration. So if the feeling underlying your sense of frustration is one of sadness, chances are it's because you feel a sense of helplessness or hopelessness. By contrast, if the feeling underlying your sense of frustration is one of anxiety, it's probably because you're feeling uncertain or in need of reassurance. Lastly, if you're feeling angry as your underlying emotion, as the emotion that underlies your feeling of frustration, it's probably because you feel thwarted or stopped or blocked or stuck in some way. Teasing apart the feelings that underlie your sense of frustration with your knitting can ultimately help you to get past them. So if you're feeling sad, think about whether that's coming from a sense of helplessness or hopelessness, and what it might take to move you past that feeling. If you're feeling anxious, you may just be in need of reassurance. If you're feeling angry, try to figure out what it is that's blocking or thwarting you, right? What it is that's keeping you feeling stuck. Let's take a few examples. So if, for example, you feel really frustrated with your knitting because you feel like you knit too slowly, right? One of the things to think about is first of all, what do you mean by that? And second of all, where's that coming from, right? Is it really that you feel like you should be able to knit more quickly, or are you sort of feeling a sense of like trying to keep up with the Joneses? Because if it's the latter, it may be that that's a kind of anxious feeling, that you're just sort of worried that you're not good enough, right? Because I think that there are a lot of, really seasoned knitters who generally don't worry too much about, how quickly they're knitting or how much they're knitting. And so I think that tends to be something that comes from like that sense of frustration. I wish I could knit more quickly is often to me code for I don't think I'm really a great knitter. And it may not be true. I think that feelings of frustration change from when you're a beginner knitter or crocheter or spinner or weaver to when you're a more seasoned practitioner of the fiber arts. So I find that whenever I'm learning a craft for the first time, my feelings of frustration really revolve around that sense of helplessness or hopelessness, right? I don't know if I can learn how to do this. I'm not good at it. It shouldn't be taking me this long to figure this out. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't know, like, I've had somebody explain it to me and I still don't understand it, right? So it's all like surrounding that idea of helplessness, which makes sense because you're new to the craft. By contrast, I find that as I've become a more seasoned knitter, I've maybe moved into the angry feeling of frustration more often, so that now my feelings of frustration often tend to kind of take the form of, how come I can't figure this out? I've been knitting for how long now? And so that's a very different sort of sense. I feel like blocked or like I'm stagnating, right? It shouldn't be this hard for me to figure this out. I think one of the challenges with frustration is that we tend to kind of try to hide it, right? We don't want to look like we're, not able to pick up a particular craft or we're not good at it. But I would counsel you to, if you start feeling frustration about your knitting projects or any fiber art project, to kind of get curious. Like, think about, okay, what's the emotion underlying my feeling of frustration right now? Am I just sad? Am I anxious? Am I angry? Because figuring out that emotional response will help you figure out how to move forward on it. I think the worst thing that you can do when you feel a sense of frustration when you're working on a particular craft is to simply abandon the craft itself, right? Because the feelings of frustration are a normal part of the knitting or crochet or spinning or weaving processes. And so my advice is, to get curious about your frustration, right? Try to take a step back from it and figure out what emotion is operating underneath it, because I think that will help you solve it.